The woman I just proposed to spent months secretly mapping my daily schedule, engineering every single coincidence we ever had, and genuinely cannot understand why that disturbs me. And here's what I can't stop turning over. It's not just that she did it. It's that I look back at 3 years of a relationship I thought I understood, a relationship I built my entire adult life around, and I can't find where the real version starts. Here's the thing. I still love her, and I don't know what to do with that. My name is Marcus. I'm 28 years old, and about 3.5 years ago, I made what felt like the biggest, most terrifying, most clarifying decision I'd ever made. I moved to a new city, not a new apartment, not a new neighborhood, a different city entirely. I'd spent 3 years after graduation working toward a position at a firm there, and when the offer came through, I said yes before I'd finished reading the full email. Packed everything I owned into 2 carloads, signed a lease on a house I'd only seen in photos, and drove out in late June with that specific low-grade terror that comes with voluntarily dismantling everything familiar. The house was better than I deserved for what I was paying. Pool in the back, a running trail that circled the whole neighborhood. Those 2 things. I know it sounds small, but those 2 things mattered more to me than I would have admitted out loud. I swim to clear my head. I run to reset. They're not hobbies, they're maintenance. I saw those in the listing and thought, I can build something here, and I did. Quietly, methodically. The way you do when you're 25 and alone somewhere and don't know anyone yet. I worked. I swam. I ran. I waved at neighbors. For the first month, that was my entire social life. A nod here, a doing well thanks there. I wasn't lonely exactly. I was just unattached, still in the process of building a version of myself that belonged there. That's who I was before Kim. She showed up at my door in July, her and her sister Lisa, standing on my porch with the kind of easy warmth that makes you widen the door before you've consciously decided to. Lisa lived directly across the street with her husband and their 2 kids. Kim was staying with her, visiting I assumed, though I wasn't clear on the details. They introduced themselves. We made small talk, and before I'd fully tracked the conversation, I'd been invited to their 4th of July cookout. I said I might stop by. What I meant was, probably not. 4th of July came and I was doing exactly what I do when I have no plans, sitting at home and justifying it. Late afternoon, Kim and Lisa appeared at my door again and essentially refused to accept a no. Lisa said something about too many burgers going to waste. Kim said it was un-American to eat alone on the 4th. I laughed. I stayed 2 hours, maybe more. Kim asked me questions the entire time, not in an interrogation way, in the way of someone who is genuinely curious and knows how to make a conversation feel mutual. What I did for work, whether I liked the neighborhood. Had I been running, she'd seen me on the trail a few times. What I was reading, what kind of music I listened to. I answered everything. I remember thinking, she's easy to talk to. That's a rarer thing than it sounds. I walked home that evening feeling something I hadn't felt since moving there, like I might actually know someone here. Over the following months, I kept running into Kim, the grocery store a few blocks from the neighborhood, a coffee shop I started going to around that time. Good light, good espresso, the kind of place that becomes a routine before you realize it has. The trail. Each time she'd flag me down or pause her cart and we'd talk. She had similar taste in music, similar taste in books. She had opinions on every film she'd seen and was not shy about them. She was quick and she made me work to keep up, which I liked. I thought I was lucky. I genuinely thought, sometimes you move somewhere new and a good person just happens to live nearby. That's what this was. That was what I thought this was. About 6 months after I moved in, I was out on the trail on a Sunday morning. October, I think. That particular shade of fall where the air is cold enough to feel clean, and the light through the trees is still warm. Headphones in, a good pace. That specific blankness you reach when a run is working the way it's supposed to. And then Kim was there, at the edge of the trail. Waving both arms, I pulled out a headphone, slowed down. She said she'd lost her phone somewhere on the trail. Asked if I'd call it, I called nothing. She asked if I'd walk with her and help look. I said sure. We walked the trail for about 15 minutes, calling the number every couple of minutes. Found it eventually in a pile of leaves just off the path, slightly hidden. She was relieved. I was glad we found it. We walked back together and talked the whole way. The following week, she knocked on my door and offered to take me to lunch as a thank you. I said yes, that lunch. I remember it clearly. We talked for almost 2 hours, ordered the same thing without coordinating, which made both of us laugh. She listened the way that makes you feel like what you're saying is worth hearing. By the time we walked out, I already knew I wanted to see her again. We started dating shortly after that. A year ago, she moved into my house. 4 months ago, I proposed. She said yes before I'd finished the sentence, and for 3 years, I thought our story was one of the good ones. The kind that starts quietly and becomes more yours the more you tell it. New city, good neighbor, running into each other everywhere. The trail, the lunch, the slow accumulation of small moments adding up to something real. I had no idea that most of those moments had been engineered. About a month ago, one of Kim's close friends found out her boyfriend had been cheating on her. A few days after that, she came over to our house. I was working on getting the pool area cleaned up. End-of-season maintenance, nothing complicated, just something to keep my hands busy. Kim and her friend were out on the back patio with a bottle of wine, and I could hear them clearly while I worked. Most of it was what you'd expect. The anger, the solidarity, the righteous, unanimous verdict on the boyfriend. I have no issue with any of that. At some point, Kim asked me to bring out more wine. I did. And that's when I walked back out through the kitchen and heard the conversation shift. Kim's friend was saying something like, "I just need to find myself a good one. Maybe I need to start stalking somebody." It was a joke, and they were both laughing. And then Kim said easily, casually, the way you say something you've said before, "I can give you the full course. Stalking to get your man 101. I stopped. I was just inside the back door. They couldn't see me from the patio. Kim talked about figuring out a man's schedule, about identifying the places he goes regularly and showing up there, about creating opportunities to talk to someone and making those opportunities feel organic, about how it takes patience, sometimes months, about how you have to be consistent but not obvious about it." Her friend was laughing through most of it. At some point she asked, "Wait, did you actually do this with Marcus?" And Kim said yes, and they kept laughing. I set the wine down on the kitchen counter and stood there for a while, then I went back outside. The rest of that evening was normal on the surface. Her friend stayed over. We watched something. I couldn't tell you what. I was present in the way you are when one part of your brain is still running, something in the background, and the other part is maintaining conversation on autopilot. That night I lay awake for a long time, and that's when it started, the recut. The version of the past 3 years playing back with different information loaded into it. The grocery store. Was that her? The coffee shop I started going to. Did she follow me there? The trail? I kept coming back to the trail. Specifically the phone. The lost phone that led to the walk that led to the lunch that led to us. Was the phone real? I want to be honest about something. What I felt that night wasn't quite anger. It was something more disorienting than anger. I felt unmade, like something I had used to understand the shape of my own life had been quietly removed, and I was only now noticing it was gone. I still loved her. Lying there in the dark, I still loved her. That wasn't in question. But I kept coming back to one thing. Every single time she looked at me, every coffee shop, every trail, every moment I thought I'd chosen, she knew. And she let me believe it was chance. The next morning after her friend left, I asked her about it. I kept my voice even. I told her I'd come back out with the wine and overheard them on the patio. I asked if what she'd said was true. She tried to walk it back first. Said they were just being silly, exaggerating, wine-talking for her friend's benefit. I said, "But you told her it was true." A pause, and then she admitted it. Not all at once. The way confessions come out when someone didn't plan to confess. She had clocked my running schedule within the first few weeks. She started going to the grocery store at times. She calculated I'd be there. The coffee shop she hadn't happened to discover. She'd followed me there once to figure out where I went in the mornings, then started going herself. The encounters on the trail weren't coincidences. She had been engineering proximity for months, trying to create enough natural overlap to give me a reason to ask her out. And then she told me about the phone. The phone wasn't lost. She and Lisa had come up with it together. Kim told her she couldn't find a way to progress things organically, and Lisa suggested the phone on the trail. Place it off the path, wait for a day he runs, flag him down, ask for help. Walk together. Let it develop from there. She said all of this to me in our kitchen, in the house we share, with an expression I still haven't fully decoded, and then she said she didn't see what the big deal was. I liked you. I wanted to get to know you. I didn't do anything wrong. I asked her if she understood why it bothered me. She said I was overreacting, and that word, or that specific word, hit differently than the confession had, because I could work through the original revelation. I could try to understand the impulse, the nervousness of liking someone and not knowing how to start, the frustration of proximity without an opening. I could find my way toward understanding the human thing underneath it, even if the execution crossed a line I would have drawn, but the dismissal, the refusal to stand inside my experience for even a moment. You have to understand, when someone maps your movements without your knowledge, when they manufacture the moments you believed were real, and then when you bring that to them and they tell you that your discomfort is an overreaction, it doesn't just make you question the past. It makes you question your ability to read the present. Right now, this conversation, this person, she has apologized since, multiple times, but the apology keeps coming with a caveat attached. I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry it bothers you. Never quite. I understand that what I did was wrong, and I don't know what to do with that gap. About a week after that conversation, I went for a run, same trail, same neighborhood. Early morning, cold and quiet, the kind of silence that only exists before everything else starts. I know this trail by feel. I've run it in every season, in every weather, at every hour. For the first time it felt unfamiliar, because I kept seeing it from outside myself. The way she must have seen it all those months. I thought about the October morning she flagged me down. I thought about how natural it felt to slow down and help someone look for a phone. How uncomplicated it seemed. How it never once occurred to me to question it. And that's when I thought about that version of myself. The one who believed he'd just gotten lucky with his neighbors. Who thought those coffee shop run-ins were the pleasant, random kind of coincidence that sometimes happens to people. Who went home from a cookout thinking, I might actually know someone here. That guy had been happy, not because he was naive, because he was living inside something that felt genuine. And that feeling wasn't a lie exactly. The connection was real. The conversations were real. The feelings were entirely real on both sides, I believe that. But he was making choices inside a situation he didn't know had been constructed. And that matters. It matters because his sense of what he was choosing wasn't accurate, and nobody told him. I stopped running and stood on the trail for a while. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just a man standing still on a path, trying to figure out which question is actually the one he needs to answer. Here is where things stand right now. We are still engaged. We are still present with each other. There are meals and conversations and moments that feel like us. Moments that feel like the 3 years I thought I understood. But there's also something in the room now that wasn't there before. A low, persistent awareness. A new habit I have of watching the edges of things. Not paranoia. Closer to the recalibration that happens after a trusted instrument gives you a wrong reading. You don't throw it out. You just stop using it the same way. I've turned this over from every angle. I know there's a version of this story that sounds almost romantic. The girl who liked the guy across the street and didn't know how to reach him. Who engineered small moments because she couldn't figure out another way to start. There are people in her life who find it charming. Friends who have heard the story and called it sweet, called it resourceful, called it something a romantic comedy would be built around. And I understand that framing. I do. I'm not immune to it. But here's the other version, the one I can't argue myself out of. She decided that what she wanted mattered more than my ability to make an informed decision about my own life. Every moment I thought I was choosing. Every run-in I thought was chance. Every conversation I thought was organic. I was choosing inside a context she had built and I knew nothing about. I don't know how to reconcile those two versions. Maybe the answer is that both are true at once, and that the tension between them is just what this is now. What I keep coming back to is this. I have to decide whether I believe the Kim who did those things, and the Kim I've spent 3 years building a life with, are the same person. Whether someone who thought it was acceptable to manufacture the beginning of our relationship is the same person who shares my house, who said yes when I proposed, who I am genuinely planning a future with, and I have to decide whether the fact that she still doesn't fully see the problem, whether that's a gap that closes over time, or a gap that tells me something about how she sees me. I want to be honest about something. There is a grief in this I didn't expect. Not grief for the relationship, not yet. Grief for the story I thought I had. The clean one. The lucky one. The one where a guy moves somewhere new and meets a woman on a trail and it just works. The way things sometimes just work. That story was true in every way that matters most. The love was real. The connection was real. Everything we built together, real. The beginning I thought I remembered was not. And I'm still inside of figuring out what I do with that. What I will say is this. Being told you're overreacting when you're disturbed by someone covertly monitoring your movements is not a small thing. That's not a minor conversational misstep. That's a person failing to locate themselves in your experience. And if I'm going to spend my life with someone, if I'm going to build the next 40 years with a person, I need her to be able to do that. I need her to be able to sit with the hard thing and say, I see why this hurt you. Not I'm sorry you feel that way, that next conversation, not the one about the past, but the one about who we are to each other right now. That's the one that's going to matter. I'll let you know how it goes. Real stories. Real chaos, real talk. I'm Storyboard Reddit.